All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Brady-Chizana. Super excited for today's show. Sam Ruben, Chief Sustainability Officer and co-founder of Mighty Buildings, is joining us today. So, Sam, why don't you say hello to the CX Nation, my friend?
Hey, great to meet you all. I'm glad you're listening in and really excited to be here.
So, guys, Sam has got a super cool story. He is building a business and working on a team that's doing, number one, a bunch of super cool things, but number two, they're helping to think about the future of our planet, the future of what people are going to do when it comes to just thinking about future homes, dealing with climate change, dealing with all of these different variables that some of us, when we're building our startups or building our technology companies, we don't think about this stuff. And Sam, I'm super excited for you to kind of set the stage today and talk about some of the things that you guys are doing at Mighty Buildings. Why don't you take a couple minutes? Love for you to kind of introduce yourself, introduce a bit of your background and a bit of your experience, and let's hop right into some of the amazing things that you guys are doing today at Mighty Buildings.
Sounds good. Yeah. So my background is I have a dual MBA, MPA, so public as well as business administration with a focus on sustainability. I attended Presidio Graduate School, which is one of the first programs in the world to center the entire curriculum around sustainability and systems thinking. And so when we started Mighty Buildings, I was actually working as a sustainability consultant, helping organizations improve their bottom line through savings in waste, water, energy, transportation, things like that, largely focused on the built environment. So building envelope, HVAC systems, everything from climbing into the drop ceiling to check out exactly what kind of heat pump that is, to taking a FLIR camera to the outside to understand where the thermal leakage is, all those things. Obviously easy things like switching out the lights as well. And then even like, what's it mean to move a garbage can 10 feet? And what impact does that have on employee behavior? So when I connected with my co-founders, I met my co-founder and our CEO, Slava, in the Manufactory, which in awesome restaurant in San Francisco at the time. And he shared the vision that he and our CTO, Dimitri, had come up with, because they'd previously done a 3D printing pen that was similarly used light to similar to what we're doing now, use light to cure. So you could actually print directly on your hand. So similar to the idea of if you've been to the dentist recently and we're lucky enough to have a cavity where they put a little resin in there and they hit it with a lamp. Take that idea, but then apply it to a pen. Now what we've done is taken that idea and applied it to building a house.
Okay. I love it.
So we incorporated in August 2017, but decided to stay in stealth mode for the next 3 years while we really focused on the technology and really locking it in. But just as importantly, we are also focusing on the regulatory side of things, because obviously we're talking about the built environment. We're talking about people's houses. We're talking about roofs over our heads. And so we recognize the sad reality is the building code's written in blood. And so it was really important to us that we were doing everything we could to demonstrate the safety of what we're doing because of how new it is. And so we worked closely with UL to create the world's first standard for 3D printed construction, UL 3401, which has since been added to the International Residential Code as Appendix AW. So that's the first time 3D printing is in the code.
That's
what
awesome.
That means is jurisdictions can take that and plug it into their local codes. And even those that don't formally adopt it can look to it for reference if there's an opportunity or if they have interest in using 3D printing to help address their housing crisis. So what we're really trying to do, and so the material is called Lightstone. So it's what's considered a thermoset composite. So many people in the industry are familiar with Corian by DuPont that's been used for countertops and claddings going back to the 60s. What we've done is taken that idea and that same type of material, but purpose designed it for broader use cases. So we started with accessory dwelling units here in California to take advantage of laws that were passed to make it easy to permit those. But that's always been our beachhead. We never intended to stay there. So now we're moving into single family homes. We have a couple developments that we're going to be breaking ground on in Coachella Valley next year, which we're really excited about.
That's awesome.
A combination of single family homes plus ADUs. We've also kicked off a design process so the single family homes are designed with EYRC Architects, amazing architecture firm out of Los Angeles, and designed with Burl Happold Engineering. And those designs are award winning at this point. So we've won multiple awards for that design. So we're really excited to begin deploying those. We actually just got approval under California's factory built housing for the first of those designs to be able to move forward. And we just kicked off a multi-story design project that we're going to be for a production system that can be deployed either as multi-story single family homes or, and this is where I get really excited, townhouses. And this is a kind of a step towards our longer term vision of being able to do low rise and potentially even high rise apartments in the future to really begin to address vertical density. And so our whole mission is really, how do we leverage cutting edge technology to unlock the productivity needed in the industry to solve the housing crisis, while also addressing all the climate implications of that additional housing. Because a lot of people aren't aware of this, but 40% of all emissions globally are tied to the built environment. Roughly 30 of those are from the energy use of the buildings, and that's where being energy efficient and really being, in our case, being super energy efficient, so we can bring down the cost of incorporating on-site renewables and storage so that we can create zero net energy homes that generate at least as much as they use from the grid over the course of the year, as well as the 10%, which is from the construction phase itself, so the embodied carbon. And in that regard, we're still a little higher than we want to be. We're kind of like an electric vehicle in that regard, but we've committed to being carbon neutral without offsets by 2028. And so we're really taking a stand to show to be a tool for the industry to help them turn construction from a driver of the climate crisis into a solution.
I love it. And Sam, it's funny, man. I know that for the listeners, Sam's doing the show today from New York City. You can hear that. You can hear.
Yeah,
that.
I do apologize for the background.
No.
Normally it's nice and quiet in Sausalito where I live.
No. My point was actually, Sam, when you talk about just thinking about giving our listeners an idea, like think about and imagine New York City right now, and then think about some of the stuff that Sam's talking about. Like some of these buildings are so big. They demand so much energy, so much resources, so much need just to keep the things running, right? Just to keep them going. And then you take a city like New York City, for example, guys, and just the magnifier of how much energy, how much resources, and I hate to say it, but we're going to get into sustainability in today's show anyway. Think about the footprint, right? And think about just what a beautiful, incredible. I mean, New York's one of my absolute favorite cities on planet Earth. All hands down, lived there for almost 10 years, but like, we got to start thinking about what we're going to do for the future, right? We got to start thinking about what's going to happen 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, because this stuff's finally real, guys. And Sam, and before we dive into the pillars, I love that you call out, number one, that you've spent just a huge chunk, man, of your career thinking about sustainability, thinking about what some of the future options are going to look like, thinking about reducing our footprint and helping. Here's the other thing, man. I told you this on the first time that me and you chatted to hit it off, is like, Sam, there's got to be more people out there reminding other smart people, hey, that clock, man, it is ticking fast. Smart people constantly say, Adrian, this is not going to happen in our life. Sam, this isn't going to happen. Well,
we have 5 to 10 years to change everything, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And so that's part of why we're doing what we're doing, is because we don't have time to waste.
We do not have time.
We have to be acting now in order to have any chance of humanity thriving in the future.
Big time, 100%. Sam, so first of all, awesome. Love how you're setting the stage for us. Let's take a minute. Let's jump into that first CX pillar of team. I'd love for you to spend a couple minutes talking about the team that you and the rest of the team at Mighty Buildings has built, that's on this mission, trying to help all of us think about what some of our future options are going to look like. Spend some time talking about how you put the team together, and talk about some of the different roles and some of the key areas and departments that you and the other founders had to think about as you started building out the Mighty Buildings team.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky to have an amazing team of just brilliant individuals. I mean, I've got the easy job. I get to do a lot of thinking about long-term strategy and doing a lot of talking, but we have an incredible team of material scientists, engineers, civil, structural, mechanical, because we're not just talking about the buildings, but we're also talking about the printers, because we build our own printers. We utilize off-the-shelf KUKA systems, and we have robotic engineers working on those. We've got software engineers working on our back end. We've got an amazing sales team and a customer support team. So it's really, I mean, for us, it's both sides, like kind of all that technology side, but then also that sales side, also that human connection side, that traditional building industry kind of setup. And so we got architects, we've got engineer, so amazing team. And for us, none of the 4 of us, of the founders, come from construction. And that's part of why we're doing what we're doing, is because we didn't know we weren't supposed to. Right. But in doing that, we've also recognized that there's so much we don't know, and there's so much incredible experience and knowledge in the industry already, because we're not where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Why would we? And so it's about really elevating those unknown unknowns and identifying who we need to bring on the team to fill those gaps. And so we've been able to leverage some of the great work in the industry, finding the right people from other advanced construction companies, people who come from a more traditional background, who are able to bring their experience. Like, we've got a great superintendent, foreman, all that traditional building team that works with the non-printed parts, and also assembling the printed parts into the full buildings. But then, as I mentioned, got a strong sales team. So some of them are, and we're a little unique because all 3 of my co-founders are originally from Russia. Okay. And so part of this is we've got an amazing, all of our R&D is in Moscow.
Okay.
Although we're setting up a secondary facility in Mexico as well to be able to bring both sides of the team together and also create a optimized nearshore supply chain. And so we've been a global company from the beginning. And so we've always cast our net really wide when it comes to finding those right people, and whether they're here in the U.S., whether they're in Russia, whether in Monterrey in Mexico. And so that's something we're really excited about and has been key to our success is finding the right team. And sometimes that's working with recruiters. Sometimes that's really leveraging our networks and really putting the word out there, because it's amazing. Smart people know smart people. Pretty shocking, I know.
It's very, very true. They definitely do.
and that's actually been, honestly, some of our biggest, best hires have been people who reached out to us. People who were like, I love what you're doing. I want to be a part of this. And so that's been something that's been kind of amazing, actually. And that's where, like, why one of the reasons I love being on podcasts like yours is because you never know who's going to hear and be like, oh my God.
Yep.
And all of a sudden they send us a 30 slide PowerPoint with what they're seeing, with what they're doing, and based on their skills, why they think they can help us. Like, literally, we have like one of our top analysts heard about us, put together a like, I think it might be a 30-page PowerPoint or 30 slide PowerPoint that on the construction market, on the 3D printing market, on the trends he was seeing. It was amazing.
But that's the power of, like, think about it, this connected world that we live in today, and this idea of being able to just, number one, passions, man. The first thing I thought about there, Sam, is like, if you are building your business, building your team, building your portfolio, man, if you can start to find and marry the folks that actually already have pre-existing passion around the space or the topic or the thing, the willy, the where that you're putting out there into the world, you are automatically way ahead of some of the other individuals that might be way more better fit for that job. Maybe they even have relevant construction experience or relevant building or development experience, but that passion, man, that's something that you can't ignore. The other thing I just want
that ability to learn.
And the ability to learn, man, exactly, and sharing and constantly learning and sharing ideas. There's another thing, Sam, that I just want to call really quick, which I think is super interesting. You and the rest of your founding team, being all across the world, you guys are absolutely solving a global problem. This is not a Bay Area problem. This is not a New York City problem. This is not a Miami problem. This is a problem across the world, right? There's so many different people that are either, number one, already being impacted by thinking about just housing and affordability related to housing. Number one, we constantly are reminded almost every single solitary night on the news around just the struggle or the difficulty in some of the big leading global cities around affordability or even just inventory, man. There's a lot of folks that have to move out of these places because they can't find a place to live. And then the last one's the climate change, man. And Sam, that's what you are an expert on, and you and the team are an expert on, but like, the climate is going to also make an even bigger impact on all of this housing stuff as we get further into the future.
Like, just look at the here in Cal. And when I'm back, when I say here in Cal, when I'm in California, it's like we've got fires that are decimating communities every year. Like, and those houses need rebuilt. Those communities need rebuilt. We're seeing hurricanes, which are decimating communities. Those houses need rebuilt. Those people need place to live in the meantime. But even places in the Midwest, which we're seeing those downbursts, or in Texas with the ice storms, and and that's just here in the U.S. That's not even getting into some of these other areas that are low-lying islands, and for them it's not a question of, oh, that's an existential crisis in the future. It's like, this is an extinction level event for their communities right now. And that's the thing, is like, and as you say, it's global, and it requires global solutions. And so that's why our vision has always been to have a distributed network of factories around the world where we have the right local partners to handle kind of the permitting, the land acquisition, the things that require those local relationships, and really let us come in and really focus on unlocking the productivity, unlocking sustainability with our production system and the Mighty Factory that we've developed, which in a 50 by 50 square foot footprint, we can generate 100 units a year.
That's huge, man.
Yeah, and then we just scale that up by adding additional cells.
And by the way, guys, for the listeners, you have to check out mightybuildings.com, because the buildings and the houses and the structures that you and the team are building, Sam, they're awesome looking. They're cool. They're modern. You can see, and I'm not even remotely a sustainability expert, but like, you can see some of the sustainability, simplicity, the ability to be able to get a lot of people excited about some of these structures. They're cool looking. They're futuristic, and it's like, the other thing too is, again, I think it's one of those things where, like, some of the ways that we've traditionally built stuff, Sam, and again, you know way more about this than me, but like, it's just not going to be able to continue to be the way that we've been doing it for the last several millennia here on Earth, as humans have been building these huge structures all over the place, right?
Yeah, I mean, for one, we just don't have enough people to build the way we have if we actually want to solve the housing crisis. And two, if we keep building with the same materials and the same methods, we might end up with all the housing, but it's not going to be a world where any of us want to live in.
That's right.
So that's the reality. And like, how do we leverage new technology to unlock a new way of building and bring new thinking? But again, it's not about displacing the legacy players. It's really about giving them a new tool to do more with the existing labor force, with the existing tools they have, and really add to their toolkit to really unlock that productivity, accelerate that development of those houses, and then also ideally get past just carbon neutrality into carbon negativity, so that we can start sequestering carbon into the built environment. And that's something I'm really excited about, because then we're taking construction from being the bad guys, because we often, when it comes to the environment, we're often cast as the bad guys,
right?
And really letting us wear that white hat for once and really be the heroes. Because if we can address that 40% of global emissions, we're taking a giant step towards really solving the global climate crisis.
Big time. Sam, you just started to hit on it, but I'd love for you to dive a little bit further into the second CX pillar tools. So take a couple minutes just to kind of give our listeners some ideas as you and the team at Mighty Building started to actually catch wind, as you started to get that fire ripping, as you started finding interest, and there was people, there was developers, there was customers, there's people that they knew how to print these things, they knew how to build them. What did that look like from a toolkit management perspective? Spend a couple minutes talking about some of the tools or some of the different pieces of software that you guys needed to use just to be able to keep the train on the tracks, and just to try to make sure that you could keep pushing forward each and every day.
Yeah, so a lot of it's about finding what is that right toolkit. Previously we've used Pipedrive in terms of for our sales here, helping make sure the sales team's tracking where people are within the that process and moving things forward. We're using Procore on the production side to really make sure that we're tracking all the different steps of each project, and that we're able to collect that data and be able to put together dashboards so it's easily accessible. Because that's important too. Is like you can collect all the data in the world, but if you don't have a way to share it, it's useless.
And that's a hard part too. Sometimes collecting it is one part. Figuring out how to socialize it and make sense of it and calls to action on it, that's a totally different ballgame, my friend.
Yeah, so we've got a dashboard, like I can click and I can see exactly where every unit in production is in the process, and understand how close to completion it is, whether it's entitlement still, whether we and so having tools like that is really important for us. We also, admittedly, one of our biggest tools is Google Suite, Productivity Suite. Like are able to share documents, but we also use the Jamboard. We also like Miro, which is really cool for doing mind mapping and really laying out different things. We can have a whole giant canvas that you can tie together 3 to 4 different teams, each have their own areas, but then where they overlap, you can bring that together really easily. And so there's some really cool tools out there that we've used that I'm really excited about. Those are some of the biggest.
I love it, man. Sam, I think it's funny, like even just the Google example, right? It's like today more than ever, teams need to be able to work in an asynchronous fashion. They need to be able to essentially collaborate or to add their 2 cents or to add their part of the puzzle or add their part of the whole picture. Like when you talked about the meshing of some of the stuff you guys are using with Miro, that stuff is mandatory now, guys. That used to be, I would argue, companies that were ahead of the game are doing a little bit better than maybe some of the others in terms of leveraging technology, leveraging some of these different SaaS solutions out there that were going to help them grow their business. Now, post-COVID and post-pandemic, guys, this is here to stay. This is something that if you're not already thinking about it, you have to be. And then I would argue taking time to have somebody on the team learning about what solutions or what tools are on the horizon on a I would argue a daily and a weekly basis is key. It's going to be key to success, and it's going to be key to keeping your teams tightly connected and tightly collaborating moving forward.
100%. And for us, we've been using Zoom. We've been using all these collaborative tools from the beginning, just because of the distributed nature of our team. But as COVID's hit and everyone's become distributed, regardless of whether you might all be living in the same town, but if you haven't been in the office in a year, you've been working in a distributed manner. And so really identifying those right tools, and then also just traditional design tools like Revit and BIM 360, things like that, and really allow us to unlock some of those those tools, and then apply that to 3D printing, where we've also developed our own host of software in terms of the slicer, in terms of being able to take 3D models and convert them into 3D printable concepts. So there's a lot of cool things happening.
That's super, super cool. Sam, I'd love to dive into the third CX pillar of process. So couple things. Number one, we've already kind of hit on some of the remote work management and also just like the global team management views that you guys have had to think about since day one. I'd love to just kind of pick your brain and hear some ideas around how you and the Mighty Buildings team has kind of thought about process as the team has grown, as the business has grown, and then as the space and the demand in general for some of the stuff that you guys are making and producing and putting out there in the world has grown. How has process kind of fallen into this whole mix? How can you spend a couple minutes talking about some of the ways that you guys have thought about kind of keeping the process tightly knit, making sure that different teams and different departments, or maybe even internal and external users of the Mighty Building product suite, how have you guys had to think about managing all this process as the business has grown?
Yeah, well, I mean, process is everything. I mean, you can have the greatest team in the world, but if you don't have the right processes in place, how do you keep? There's no way to keep them moving in the same direction and moving towards that goal together. And like, especially as you grow and especially as you start to hit scale, how like if you don't have process in place, you might have the demand, but how are you going to get that into actual units if there's not a process to let it for that to flow? So we actually have up to this point, we've been leveraging a lot of Scrum and Agile methodology that we borrowed from the software space. Yep. And that's part of why we've done as much as we have as quickly as we have, because we'll have parallel tracks going. We have bi-weekly sprint reviews. And so, but as we've grown, we've kind of reconfigured that and been like, okay, well, what's that look like to do it with bigger teams? And we also have a lot of fluidity in our teams as our needs change, as our focus shifts a little, particularly now as we're moving into more and more developments and working with builders and developers directly rather than just working with individual homeowners. It's okay, what are the needs of that market versus the B2C market, and how do we build those right processes? And so for us, it's been a learning experience. I mean, there's always growing pains, and that's just part of what it looks like. But it's about taking the time to think about it, and ideally think about it before you have to do it. And that's the hard lesson to learn, is like, because when your head's down doing the work, it's harder to think about, well, what process am I going to need in 6 months from now? And what do I need to be doing now to start laying the groundwork and the foundation for them? And so just that mindset, I think, is something that's really important, and that that catches a lot of companies off guard. Because if you're already in your growth phase, it's too late to build the process.
Right.
Because this idea of building the plane while flying it is important, but you also need to be designing what you're going to be building in the future. And so it's about both. And it's about making sure you're creating space for both the now and what's coming in the pipeline. And so that's one of the things we've done, I think, at times really well, at other times not as well. That's just how it goes. Like, we're not perfect, but it's the fact that we're thinking about it and looking at it in that way, I think, is one of the things that's allowed us to move so quickly and adapt so quickly as needs and things change. And then for us, it's as I said, a lot of tools, a lot of bringing the teams together, and just really making sure that you're balancing those needs. So that's I think that I'd say is the biggest learning.
I love it, Sam. I think it's funny too, because whether you're building a company like Mighty Buildings and you're focused on essentially disrupting this incredibly huge space, right? This construction, development, just literally building tomorrow's structures that all of us are either going to go to work or to school or to live in. I guess one of the first things that I just think about hearing you say that, Sam, is like, on the process side, man, you guys, you noted this at the front of today's show, but like, you've got a bunch of different SMEs under the Mighty Buildings camp. You've got literally folks that are thinking about marketing and sales. You got people that are thinking about building tomorrow's 3D printers. You got people that are building houses. You got other people on the team that are thinking about thinking about how do you develop this stuff into the future. And then you've got all of the other, you mentioned some of the folks that are our whole world here at CXC. You've got the customer support, customer success, customer experience side of things. But like, man, when I think about process, like sharing some of that tribal knowledge across those different SME groups, man, it's critical, because it's like, number one, you have probably some of these incredible people that came to Mighty Buildings and they were experts at their specific space, but you guys are tapping into a world where you do need to know a little bit about all of the different things that are happening out there. You have to understand the whole world, the intricacies of 3D printing. You have to understand real estate or real estate development, or, I mean, come on, even some basic economics here, Sam, of getting into thinking about housing and affordability and the supply and demand and needs around, like, dude, that stuff's pretty deep and wide.
Well, and that's where the idea of systems thinking is really important, and not just like looking at, I'm in sales, so sales is all I think about. It's like, no, I'm in sales, so what system am I a part of? What impacts how I work? What's happening in production? What's happening in biz dev? What's happening in R&D? Like, what do I need to be aware of to make sure I'm doing the best I can to serve the customers that I'm working with? And that's true of no matter where you are in the company. And so that's something we've really embraced. And that's why we have these sprint reviews where everyone's invited, so that everyone in the company has a chance to understand what's going on with each individual team. And as they report out on what they're working on, what's working well, what's not. So that's I think one of the important things as well, is to really understand that everything is a part of a system. And if you're only looking at it in silos, you're going to run into problems because you don't have that information flow. You don't have that understanding of the big picture to make sure you're all moving towards that same target together.
Yep, big time. It's like this. I was one of our clients we were working with earlier today that we were talking about. It's essentially like this customer experience, customer success, customer journey map, all this stuff. It's a web. It's a big web, right? You're essentially trying to figure out how to web this thing together, stitch it together, make sure that folks understand all the different parts of the web and really understand what areas they own or what areas they're responsible for or what areas they're accountable for helping to push any customer experience or any customer success roadmap. It's
not just internal.
No way.
Like it's also about having the right partners. Because again, one of our big things is, as I mentioned before, like none of the founding team came from construction. So it's about finding those right, not just the right hires, but the right partners who like, and the right companies and collaborators to work with. Because at the end of the day, we believe in disruption, but we believe in disruption through collaboration. And as I mentioned, hinted at that before, where I'm saying like, where it makes sense to reinvent the wheel, we're gonna. But in a lot of cases, it doesn't. There's already existing solutions or there's existing knowledge that we can tap into. And so finding the right partners and finding the people who get the vision and share that mission, but are coming at it from a completely different perspective is so key as well. And being willing to collaborate and being willing to be humble and be like, yeah, I don't know everything. And owning that, but using that as that's a superpower. Honestly, totally. that vulnerability to be able to be like, there's a lot I don't know. Help me. Let's work. Let's like teach me, and like I can teach you, and then that's how new ideas come about. That's how we create something that's bigger than the whole. That's like some of its parts, and like that's how we save the future.
Yep, I love it, man. I love it, Sam. Sam, let's dive into the fourth and the final CX pillar of feedback, and I'm excited about this one because I think number one, you and the team clearly. You started this entire idea, this entire business, this entire opportunity, knowing that there was a need, knowing that there was a huge problem on the hand, knowing that whether customers or future users of the Mighty Building products even knew it or not, you knew that there was going to be this built-in demand because of all this stuff that we're talking about with climate and with just all the different things happening out there in the world. But I'd love to kind of zoom in a bit. Talk about some of the ways that you and the Mighty Buildings team has not only collected, but use some of your early customer feedback as you've gotten more and more of these units out there into the world and into function.
Huge part of things. Yeah. That's something we've taken seriously from the very beginning. Like as we even when we were stealth mode, we were doing some very, very targeted social media advertising through like Instagram and Facebook to get those first customers who were like, we're going to be those evangelists and going to be excited. And so as we continue to develop the technology and develop the designs, we were in constant communication, be like, hey, what do you think of this? We were doing and getting that feedback, like sending them surveys, picking up the phone, but that doesn't end with just at the front end. That's also okay after we deliver. What's working well? What's working like about it? What's not? Like, how can we improve it for the future? What are some of the things you're seeing as a customer and from your perspective? And so that's something that's been a huge part of our process. And a lot of that's just picking up the phone and talking to them, and being willing to take the time. And part of it's just is like meeting people, like because regardless of what happens, like and who knows, maybe that customer drops out of the pipeline at some point. But that's all good. It's because it's about building that relationship and treating them like humans, not just a number on the page, but like really seeing them as an individual human who has a unique experience that can provide valuable feedback. Because I mean, one of my first jobs after grad school was actually in branding and doing brand strategy. And one of the things that was always important in that is this idea that here's where you think you are, but you need to understand where everyone else thinks you are, because that's the only way you're going to get where you're going. Because if those are misaligned, then you're on the wrong track.
Right.
And so it's about having that, and part of it's having a bit of humility to be able to hear hard feedback.
Like, bad stuff.
Yeah. Like, and you need, but that's all as important, if not more important than the good feedback, because that tells you where you can improve. And like this idea of like, one of the things, tools I've used going way back when I worked in nonprofits is we close meetings with this idea of a plus delta. Okay. What worked well, what can be improved for future. And that's the kind of the same approach we take with feedback and really engaging is like, okay, what are we doing well? And where do we need to change? Where can we be better? And that's crucial, whether you're talking to a colleague, whether you're talking to a partner, or as in this case, very importantly, when you're talking to a customer, and really help, like making them feel a part of the process and making them feel right. Because the reality is they're a partner on this journey with you.
Totally.
They're not just numbers and not just people giving you money, but they're the ones who are going to be out in the world talking about whether you did a good job or not, and whether you're a company that they would recommend to others. And so if you can create that relationship, even if, as I said before, maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't work out, but if you built that relationship and you did it right, they're still going to tell their friends and be talking about how awesome you are. And so like we got a couple customers, like for whatever reason, it didn't work out, like local regulations or just wasn't a feasible site for delivery, but they're still out there singing our praises.
Yep.
And they're still out there talking about, like, I mean, literally I've got people who to this day end up buying anything from us, still like are sending us referrals, sending us recommendations, being like, or like maybe in their day job, they do something that can help the company. Like we got a former customer, something didn't happen, but they're helping us with some key partnership work. And so there's all these opportunities that if you don't build that relationship and if you're not willing to hear the hard feedback, because again, that's the most important. And it's about setting that ego aside and kind of really approaching it with this idea of a beginner's mind and this idea that there's so much you don't know. And the only way you're going to get that full systems view, because we all only can see our one little slice of it, is by listening and taking that time and not just treating it as something that's nice to have. It's really a must have.
It's a must have
because if you're not getting that feedback, you're not understanding who you are in the world to other people.
Big time. No, Sam couldn't have said it any better. And the one thing that you just made me think about, I think all of our listeners need to think about. Sam just said that basically the idea of being able to, whether you're at the top of a journey or the top of a funnel, even that idea of building promoters and that idea of being able to leverage some of your biggest champions out there, some of these people that think that the things that you're doing with your company or your products or your services are phenomenal. I love that you called out, it doesn't even have to be a customer. Leads and opportunities can be promoters all damn day. I say some of the best sales and business development units out there right now, they go to work every single day knowing that even if they can't flip or convert or create 10 new customers, if in the process, in their wake behind them, they've had 100 incredible at-bats or touch points where they hit it off with another human. They got to talk about their willing and their where. They got to talk about the thing that they're selling, because that's what they have to do. That's our job. That's why that was the whole reason why we're talking. But you bring it down to the human piece, that is important stuff, man. And then if you're lucky enough, if your business is lucky enough to then, once you start to rack up a bunch of customers, that relationship gets carried forward. So not only are you helping them, providing a service, providing a product, but there's a relationship and you're providing constant help and need and solutions to their problems. Now it's a game changer, guys. Now you're working with a group of people that are going to pretty much get on the top of any mountain and shout for you.
Exactly. And you're not paying a dime for it.
Exactly.
Right. I know that's after they said, that kind of sounds a little bad, but it's like, that's part of it too, is like, if you're engaging with these people as humans and activating them, and as a human being, as someone just who like shares your vision and shares your mission, like that's the best out, like by far the best marketing you can have, because they're speaking from their heart. And when you have that human connection and they're speaking from their heart, that comes through, that passion. It goes back to what we were talking before about passion and how important that is. And if you can unlock that passion in your customers or in your lead, like even in just your leads, you can change the world.
Change the world, man. Sam, what about the employees, man? You guys have built this big team now at Mighty Buildings. The team keeps getting bigger every single solitary day. How do you guys leverage that employee feedback? How do you take some of the brilliant ideas that your team and all the different individual contributors at Mighty Buildings, how do you leverage some of that employee feedback?
Yeah, well, for us, it's really important to have a culture where people feel empowered to share their experiences and share their feedback. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the production worker, building the units, whether you're one of a team lead, or whether you want part of the C-suite. Like we really encourage everyone. Sorry, there's some honking going on.
I love it, man. It's the jungle, baby. You're in the jungle, Sam.
But it's that idea that like, and part of this is kind of like from the Toyota manufacturing method and the idea of like lean manufacturing. What's it look like because it's the people who are doing the work who are going to have the best ideas to how to fix the problems they're facing. Absolutely. Or to identify problems that they're facing. If you're up at the 100 foot level, you may never see. And so empowering the team to really feel that they can bring their feedback in and their ideas in, because you never know who's going to have that incredible idea. And so that's something that's really, really important to us in Mighty Buildings, is making sure everyone understands that we want that feedback. We want them to raise their voices. And that's, again, part of why we have these sprint reviews where we invite everyone to come in and share with the work. And then we have breakouts to talk about and where there's questions, and people can bring ideas. And we've got Slack channels where people can share that ideas with the entire company, no matter who they are, and really have that kind of. So while there is some hierarchy, because particularly as you get bigger, there has to be some
Sure.
some information flows to keep efficiency. But if you can keep that kind of flat communication flows in terms of giving people an opportunity, no matter who they are, to share their ideas and to make sure that they're appreciated for that. That's because if someone shares the idea and they're shot down and no one like even thanks them for having the bravery to raise the concept, like they're never going to share another idea. You might lose out on the next thing that changes the world. Like, and so that's making sure that even if it's like that you don't move forward, that making sure that people are appreciated for having the wherewithal to think about it. Because again, you want people on your team, and we're lucky enough to have them who are thinking about this like as they're going to sleep. That's people are like, oh my God, I was thinking about this last night while I was going to bed and I had this idea. And all of a sudden you've got a new process that unlocks a whole nother level of efficiency in a certain specific area. And that can unlock efficiency or free up resources for other things and like cascading impacts. So that's something we've really embraced in the beginning, and that has been so crucial to our success, and would recommend anyone who's out there to particularly people who are higher up in companies, be humble. Make sure you're listening to the people doing the work, because they're the ones who are seeing things on the ground in real time. A lot of times when we're higher up in companies, we've got our ideas and we think we know how everything's going, but if we're not really listening, and if we're not engaging and we're not making them feel appreciated, we're going to miss out on so many opportunities for doing things better and doing things in ways that could completely change how we do business and open up whole new opportunities. And so that's something that we're really focused on. I think that's what, to me, also what a good leader does, because a good leader is a listener.
Totally
someone
agree.
Who's you're having these ideas, but you're also recognizing that other people have great ideas too, and sometimes what they're seeing is different than what you're seeing, because you're looking top down, they're looking bottom up, and they're seeing the whole underside when you're only seeing this nice shiny picture from like nice body, but if the undercarriage is rusted.
100%, Sam, this is fantastic stuff, man. I'd love to just kind of ask you, so as over these last several years, as you've been building the Mighty Buildings team, if there was one or two key areas or key focus items that you would want to let other future customer focused business leaders really kind of be dialed into or thinking about or listening for, or just really kind of focus on, what would the one or two areas be when it comes to building a business or building a new product or building a new service idea? What is the one or two key focus areas from your experience with Mighty Buildings that you'd want future entrepreneurs really kind of laser honed in on?
Yeah, well, it's come up a couple times, but one of the big ones is being humble and listening.
I like that.
And being willing to and then part of this is the idea of strong beliefs loosely held. So if I've got an idea and if I think something is a way, I'll fight for it and I'll fight to the death. But this is why I empower my team to push just as hard back on me if they think I'm wrong. Because if you can give me better data, I'll change my mind like that.
Yeah.
And that's important, is being willing to, yes, you've got your convictions and your ideas, but being willing to change your mind when someone gives you data about why there's a better idea, and being willing to listen to people who are doing the work and who have a different perspective on things than you do. And also recognizing that, so we also talk about this idea of there's 4 sectors. You've got your known knowns, the things you know.
Yep.
You've got your unknown knowns, or known unknowns, the things you don't know.
Yep.
But the really important ones are the unknown unknowns, things you don't even know you don't know.
Yeah, right.
And then your unknown knowns, which is a fascinating area, the things you don't know that you know.
Yeah.
And part of that is that as a collective, you need to, and that's where tapping into your team really is so important, and really, really listening. And something that, particularly in the built environment, if you're coming at it, this is a heavily regulated area. Start with the regulatory environment. Understand that from beginning. Don't get 3 miles down the road, when you're ready to deliver a product, only to realize that, oh, wait, you mean there's building, there's codes, there's regulations, right. And so it's not for us, it's not about coming in like an Uber and be like, hey, we're just gonna do this, we don't care.
Yep.
They were in an industry where you can get away with that. You can argue whether they have, given they haven't made a profit yet.
Yep.
But it's really, for us in the building sector, this is one of the most highly regulated industries in the world. And if you piss off a planner or a building official, you're not building.
No way.
So it's about approaching them and coming out with this is what we're doing, this is what we're seeing, what are we missing? Yep. Tell me, what are your pain points? And again, it goes back to listening, and really, and being willing to engage with the public, the regulators where they are. And sometimes you're going to be able to pull them along faster than you ever thought you could, because if you get coming at them with a solution for one of their problems and you're making their life easier, oh my God, they'll love you. Yeah. But you have to come in and recognize and meet them where they're at, and recognize that they're not focused on profit maximization. They're focused on risk management.
Yep.
And if you can identify, to like come up and show how you're helping them solve those risks and how you're addressing those concerns. And like, because like one of my favorite meetings I ever had was I met with like the planning, all the like heads of the planning and economic development and community development, planning, building, everyone for a county back really early on, like a couple years before we ever delivered a unit. And so I'm walking in with like the people who are going to decide whether we ever get to build. And I'm like, hey, we're 3D printing buildings. They start laughing. Then I show a slide with a picture of it. They're like, okay, well, at least it's pretty.
Yeah,
and then I start, and then I go full, and this is where like my having a background in public administration, being a policy wonk really comes in handy, because then I go full code wonk on them.
Right.
I'm like, this is all the testing we're doing. This is how we're meeting Title 24. This is how we're meeting all these structural stuff. This is how we're addressing these concerns in the near term. That's part of why we've moved incrementally in terms of how much of the units have been 3D printed, always expanding more as we do additional testing, additional certification. Like, so that's why now with the new single family homes, it's full exterior wall systems. Like, so which is a good, the majority of the building. Whereas initially it was a 3D printed curved wall. And so it's really about, that's been one of the, honestly, I think one of the most important things that we've done differently than a lot of startups is that we really started with the regulatory sector. And that's how we ended up creating a new standard. And why we're still involved. I lead ASTM, which is one of the major standards bodies. I lead their subsection on developing new standards for 3D print construction. And that happened because I showed up. And a lot of time for the first couple of years, I was the only construction guy in the room with all these additive manufacturing experts.
Wow.
And so, but now we're starting to get more and more people interested. I mean, my subsection's up to like 83 people now.
That's crazy.
Who are interested. I mean, to be fair, there's like 2 of us doing the work, but it still really shows like that. And this is only going to explode. Yeah, like I think like next year in 2022, we're going to see multiple developments in the United States between what we're doing, what Icon's doing. I know there's other companies that are out there. They've got projects in the works. 2023, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, we might see thousands of 3D printed homes.
I'm sure we will.
This area is about to explode.
I think it's about.
But the only way that happens is if we have standards to show building officials that it's done safely, and if building officials are on board with 3D printed construction. And so that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give. Like, no matter what sector you're in, understand the regulatory environment from the beginning. It can't be an afterthought.
It's a great piece of advice. Sam, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. As we wrap up today's show, I want to make sure, where can people find out more about you, sir? And where can people find more about Mighty Buildings?
Yeah, we can just find me on LinkedIn. I think it's LinkedIn.in/Sam Ruben. I was lucky enough to get my own name with no numbers. And also mightybuildings.com. You also find us on YouTube. We've got our own channel to search Mighty Buildings there. Find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook, everywhere you'd expect to. But yeah, we got a lot of great, cool videos. You can check out some of our deliveries, some of our installations, some information on our technology, what we're doing in terms of sustainability. So yeah, the website's a great starting point. And then all the social and everything.
Sam, I absolutely love it, man. You guys are doing some incredible things at Mighty Buildings. I can't wait to see what you guys do next. And I certainly look forward to keeping in touch with you moving forward, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, Adrian.
Thanks so much,
really
Sam.
enjoy it. Take care.